I'll never forget the night when I was out with my best friend drinking, and she thought it would be a great idea to try and drive home. I actually literally fought her to the ground to get her keys from her, which obviously resulted in her not driving home that night. To think what could have happened, I don't even want to think about it. Unfortunately, months later, I decided to go out for a few drinks after a long, stressful week at work, which just so happened to be a night I wish somebody had fought me for my keys. Unwinding with a few drinks after work seemed like a great idea, but it resulted in this. That night, I chose to drink, and unfortunately, I chose to drive, and I have absolutely no recollection of it. One minute I was at the bar, the next I was pulling my head up from the steering wheel with lights everywhere. My airbags were deployed, and I was wondering what had just happened. I still couldn't tell you to this day, but I do know that I rear-ended another vehicle. Luckily, they were all okay, and we all walked away from the accident without any injuries. While this is a very personal story that I'm not proud of, I chose to share it with all of you to open your eyes about the dangers of drinking and driving. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, every 2 minutes a person is injured in a drunk driving crash. Think about that. Up to this point of me speaking to all of you, one person has already been involved in an accident because of drunk driving. Not only is it dangerous, it's illegal and costly and should be avoided at all costs. For these reasons is why I stand here today to tell you about the dangers of drinking and driving and why you should never do it because it's just not worth it. The legal repercussions of drinking and driving can leave you without your freedom. Could you imagine not being able to drive your car and having to find a way to work or anywhere it is that you go on a daily basis? Can you imagine being arrested and forced to sit in a jail cell where you're on the county's time and not knowing when you're going to be released? It's certainly not a pleasant situation to deal with. Getting arrested for a DUI is a serious matter. Every state has very similar penalties depending on whether it's your first, second, or third offense. The Governor's Highway Safety Association website provides laws on DUIs for each state. Most of the states have very similar penalties. For a first offense, your license will get suspended. You could face jail time. You will be required to attend alcohol safety classes, and you'll have to pay fines, as well as file for an SR-22 with your insurance company. That one night out drinking with your friends can definitely turn into a nightmare before you know it. I'm sure at some point at least one of you in this audience has been faced with making a decision about driving after having a couple drinks. It's too easy to tell your friends, and yourself for that matter, those 4 words that we actually believe in that very moment: I will be okay. The reality is, no you won't. The Centers for Disease Control has stated that an average drunk driver has driven drunk 80 times before first arrest. 80 times. If that's not playing with fire, then I don't know what is. Before you get behind the wheel, I want all of you to think about whether or not it's worth it. Is it worth going to jail? Is it worth losing your license? Is it worth paying out of the you-know-what just because you thought you were going to be okay to drive? Unfortunately, at some point or another, we have all been faced with making a decision about driving after having a couple drinks. Hopefully this alone will open your eyes to one of the many reasons as to why you shouldn't drink and drive. Not only are the legal ramifications grueling and stressful, the money you will have to fork out from being arrested for drinking and driving is immense. The initial fine you'll have to pay is a bail to get out of jail. The next thing you'll have to worry about is paying for a lawyer to represent you, which can cost you thousands of dollars. While some people may be great at saving money, I'm sure this is not the type of situation you would want to spend your savings on. Aside from the lawyer, you'll have to pay court costs, you'll have to pay to attend alcohol classes, you'll possibly have to pay to get an ignition interlock device installed on your car. Your car insurance rates will increase, and you'll have to pay to get your driver's license reinstated. According to DMV's website, after combining all of these factors on what each one costs over the duration of dealing with the consequences of getting a DUI, you should expect to pay around $45,000. To think that you could actually buy a brand new car with that money is just crazy. No drink or cab ride is worth $45,000. I came across a statistic from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that drunk driving costs the United States about $199 billion a year. Now that's crazy to think about. While the overall cost of a DUI is extremely outrageous and should be enough to deter you from drinking and driving, the most important consequence you need to think about before getting behind the wheel after consuming alcohol is that you face the risk of being in a car accident and not only injuring yourself, but you could seriously injure or kill somebody else. The About Health section on drunk driving explains that a person who consumes 2 beers within an hour is 1.4 times more likely to have an accident. After 4 beers, you're 11 times more likely. After 6 beers, you're 48 more times more likely. And after 8 beers, you're 380 times more likely to get into a car accident. In 2013, 10,076 people died in drunk driving crashes. That's 1 every 52 minutes. And 290,000 people were injured in drunk driving crashes, as reported by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. These numbers are far too high. To think that you create such a high risk of taking someone's life after having a few drinks is a very scary thought. That one night out with your friends and all you do is make the poor decision to drive after you've been drinking, and your life could change forever. Fortunately, in my case, the 2 people in the car in front of me walked away from the accident with no injuries. I had a few bumps and bruises, but nothing serious. I cried for days after it happened because I felt so stupid for making such a dumb decision. The thought that I could have even killed those people that night or killed myself is the scariest situation I've ever been in my life. Don't make the same mistake I did. The only good thing that came out of it is that I became a better person and I no longer make bad decisions like the one I made that night. To be completely honest, I never thought something like that would happen to me, especially after seeing a handful of friends and family go through it. I thought I was smarter than that, maybe invincible in a sense, but what's important is that it will never happen again. I shouldn't have let it happen in the first place, but we all make mistakes. It was definitely a hard lesson learned, but I can tell you that I definitely learned from it. In conclusion, the dangers and consequences of drinking and driving are just not worth it. All these reasons alone should make you think twice about operating a vehicle after consuming alcohol. The next time you decide to have a few drinks, make sure you have a designated driver. If you don't, call a cab, because the consequences you'll face are far worse than spending a few dollars on a cab ride home. Remember, don't drink and drive. Don't put your life and other people's lives at risk. You'll save yourself a trip to jail, and you'll save your money.